Welcome to the Neuro-Performance Podcast with your host, Andy Murphy. Join us as we delve into the advanced high-performance tactics he uses with his elite clientele across the globe. Let's unlock a whole new world of business potential together.
Okay, Neuro-Performers, welcome to another episode. This is a special one, and I mean this hand on heart. One, for a start, it's a fellow Brit, so you're going to have to put up with two accents for sure, but Nicholas Charles is a new friend and becoming a really good friend. So I'm really excited about this show because over 20 years of experience, Nicholas has advised ultra high net worth individuals on wealth preservation, tax strategy, asset protection, plus a globally recognized expert in generational wealth, best-selling author of not one, but two books. And we're going to get into all of that. Nicholas Charles, FCCA, welcome to Neuro-Performance.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this because what was fascinating, let's rewind how you and me even connected. Talk about synchronicity, serendipity, whatever you want to call it, but we have a mutual friend in common.
Yes,
and it's kind of a random friend in common. And then me and you met up for lunch in London, and we started chatting. We were getting on really well, and your business partner was there from Danti, and we were having a good chat. And then I was like, "Oh, I checked your LinkedIn out, Nicholas. I checked your LinkedIn out. Do you know these people?" And it was listed like 5 people, and you were like, "Yeah, they're on my board of my company." And I'm like, "They're some of my really close friends." And then we were going through it all, and it's like, okay, maybe we were meant to meet. So. Funny how that works, right?
the universe works in a very strange way.
It
All
does
we
work
to
in a
query
very
it.
strange way. Yeah, yes, it does, mate. It does, it does. So you're sitting in London right now. How's life?
Life is good. Yeah, certainly can't complain. It's interesting. It's a fascinating world. So, pivoted from, being a tax accountant to working on this new tech platform startup called Danti, that you rightly said. And we're helping families to digitize their generational wealth.
I think it's huge. And Maddie, your business partner, and yourself, you spend a lot of time in Dubai right now, right?
Yeah, Dubai and in India. I mean, my next trip has already been planned, so I'm flying over to India in a couple of weeks' time. I'm doing 2 events, one in Ahmedabad and the other one in Mumbai. And that's not with Maddie. He's not coming, unfortunately. That's me on my own,
Okay.
with one of our representatives from Danti. And then I'm flying over to Dubai first week of May again to do another presentation on about Danti and generational wealth.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what's the Indian culture like? We're going to go off topic right now, but what's the Indian
by all
culture
means.
like? Because you're dealing with 3 different, really, we'll get into all the generational wealth because it's fascinating, and obviously I'm in that world too, and it's but the culture difference from India to Dubai to the UK, is it drastically different? So you finding a very similarities on the psychology side?
Great question. But I mean, what I've found out is that money and the emotion around money is actually a human issue rather than a cultural issue. And I learned that quite quickly. Whilst I was writing my 2 books, having spoken to multiple advisors. I mean, it all began not just me personally, because obviously I suffered from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves within 3 generations, but also on a professional level. So as a tax accountant, when I was speaking to multiple clients, I realized how big this problem was, because irrespective of the tax advice, people were still losing their money, and the relationships within the family dynamic were still imploding. And that got me really fascinated. I said, okay, it's not just happened to my family. It's not just happening to my clients. How big is this problem? Let me go and speak to other advisors. So I ended up going and interviewing over 100 advisors, primarily for the book. This was, Danti wasn't even an idea yet,
Sure.
primarily for the book called Generational Wealth. And I wanted to know how big the problem was. And literally, I just sat down, interviewed them, and asked them, questions to find out if they themselves had experienced the same problem with their own client base or even with their own social network. And each and every one of them shared their own nightmare story with me. And that spanned from not just family breakdown, but all the way to, addictive behavior and even suicide.
Absolutely. And that's what people who aren't in this field, in this world, they don't realize. And I obviously interviewed another friend of ours, Dominic,
Dominic, yes.
recently. Yeah, yeah. And Dominic, we went deep. That's a brilliant interview for everyone listening. Definitely go and look that one up. It's such a deep topic that we went into, but under it all, it seems like from the outside, wealth, money, glamorous, bling. I want this. I want that. And then you get actually into the emotional trauma that this creates or can create if it's not preempted, if it's not taught differently, if it's not educated on, if it's not what we'll talk about with your 10 pillars, right? If it's not understood correctly, it creates so much more damage that has such a ripple effect through generations. And ultimately, when we're talking about family businesses, it has that what we're talking about with Dominic is that actually people don't realize that family businesses are Walmart. You know, they employ millions and millions and millions of people. So if they're not like stable, the families, then it actually does have a negative consequence to economies. It has a negative consequence to cities. And that's what people don't really understand what's behind the scenes. So when you speak about your own dilemmas with this, and fascinating that 100 people like that you interviewed were going through the same thing. So my first question, I suppose, mate, is why is generational wealth so hard?
Oh, where do we begin? Do we have enough time to answer this
We
question?
could do a Joe Rogan style podcast.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share this and share these insights because every family's different. If you take a step back and you look at advice, and I'm not here to criticize advisors by any stretch of the imagination, because guess what? I am an advisor.
Sure.
Background is in accounting and tax planning. But if you look at the way, I'll say we've been trained. So you look at the way lawyers, accountants, wealth managers, investment bankers, fiduciaries, how we've been trained. We have been trained to look after the financial capital. We've been looking, so, if you're a tax advisor, you're there to save tax. If you're the lawyer, you're there to protect the money, whatever that means, to protect the business. If you're there as an investment banker or a wealth manager, you're there to protect the money and ideally grow the money through investments.
Sure.
But how many people are out there trained to look after the people within the family? It's very, very few. And at the same time, you might say, oh, but there's loads of psychologists out there. But yes, but going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist means that there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
And that's never a nice thing to admit, in fact, it can be very damaging to palm off one of your children or your family members and say, go and see this specialist because we think you're damaged goods. I mean, it's horrible to even admit that. And,
Absolutely.
go a step back. And, and the reason why, we're doing this is effectively to educate and tell people what needs to be done to avoid conflict, to avoid damaging conflict, because conflict is actually a good thing.
Sure.
We'll come back to conflict. But in order to put in place what needs to be put in place to ensure that, one, the family are united and in a position of agreement, so that when the financial capital is passed over, the people receiving that capital are trained to receive it. And that's really, really important. And you touched on that part. And the reason why generational wealth is so difficult is because no one knows what to do.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know. So, when you want advice, you go to an advisor. But if that advisor's only been trained to look after financial capital, then you're only dealing with a very small aspect of wealth transition. You're dealing with just financial capital. What about the human, intellectual, social capital that must be transferred over? And if you look at the most successful families, they're the ones who transition all the wealth, all the well-being to the next generation. And wealth, by the way, actually means well-being. Does not mean money.
That's I love that you brought that up, and I love how you define that too, Nicholas. It's so true, and it's like obviously I'm a coach, and it's the same thing. What we're doing is transitioning from A to B. That's really what it is. Whether I'm taking a world champion athlete from training camp to game day, whether I'm taking a hedge fund manager from 5 million to 100 million, it's that transition, right? That box that surrounds the boundary around how someone's thinking, feeling, and acting. Well, that works just like, it's a muscle, right? The brain works very much like a muscle, and it has a boundary condition around what's possible. Well, to transition over into something different, whether that's the wealth transfer, the big wealth transfer that we'll get into,
Yep.
but also a family business or a family transition. Well, it's such an identity shift. And that identity shift it's like looking at two different worlds, right? It's like two different movies. And if we don't understand that way of thinking and that way of thinking, and we don't build the brain to think in the next stage of life and business, then what we're doing is we're just playing all of these old belief systems and old attitudes and old language and old communication models. But what you're talking about is, well, there has to be an evolution of how this wealth transfer is done, right? And there has to be a change with the next generation that are coming through. They don't think like what was done before,
They
right?
can't. It's impossible. They've experienced life in a completely different manner. You
Right.
can't expect someone who's second generation to think like first generation. You can't
Right.
expect someone who's third generation to think like second or first, because your life is completely different. Let's take it on the very, very basic level, okay? So when I was young, there was no such thing as the internet or social media or Netflix or mobile technology. So I grew up without having that. Now I can't expect my children, okay, to grow up in the same manner as I did, because they were, they've been involved in the internet, social media, instant access, YouTube, Uber Eats, you name it. They've experienced instant. They've experienced, mobile technologies literally since the day they were born, and it's unavoidable. So therefore, I can't enforce, and I shouldn't enforce or expect to enforce my values on them. And that's why communication is the number one reason why families will fail to transfer wealth successfully. All stems from communication. But how many people are out there to speak about effective communication, how to speak to the next generation?
They don't, because they don't understand both sides of the coin necessarily, right?
And even worse, whenever a conflict arises within a family dynamic, the first point of call that families will go to the lawyers. Well, the worst thing you can do, like literally the worst thing you can do, is it's like literally launching the first rocket on another country and hoping they'll be okay with that. It's like, don't do that. Have the conversation first. But it's difficult until someone steps up and say, you know what, as a family, this is what we're going to do. And as a family, especially with first gen, as a family, or as a matriarch or patriarch of the family, I'm going to park my ego to one side.
Yes.
And I am going to be open and listen to the next generation. And we're going to have a discussion whereby there is no judgment.
Right.
In a safe environment. Very difficult.
Very difficult, because you have to look at the history that led them up to that moment, right? Of okay, we're going to have a communication now. Yes, but mom, dad, whoever, we've just gone through my whole life of this scenario, and now is the moment that you want to have this conversation. So it really goes to awareness, right? It's awareness of patterns, behaviors, and really trying to understand that what was done and what is new, there has to be a synchronicity to a new harmonious belief system or model of the world, right? There has to be a new for both of them. That person can't play with that one can't play with that one. So
And it has to evolve as well.
Yes.
Life is constantly moving. It's never static.
Yes.
Life doesn't, just because what you're doing today is X doesn't mean it's going to remain that way for the rest of your life. Guess what? Life changes. Things happen, good and bad and ugly. It happens. But the question is, how are you going to deal with it as a person? How are you going to deal with it as a family when something, whatever that may be, arises? And that also includes new members of the family. People get married, people have children. That changes the dynamic of the whole family. Are you prepared to introduce new members of the family? And what's the process and principles of bringing in new members into the family?
And again, it goes to trust, right? Trust.
Yeah, trust
Everything.
is huge.
Everything
Trust is
must go
huge.
back to that. Yeah.
But how do you build trust?
Communication.
Exactly. Exactly. And not just communicate, but openly communicating with, say, as a parent, I am a parent, you need to constantly reiterate that you love your children no matter what, unconditionally. And that's so important because and also you have to do what you say, not necessarily just talk about it, because children are super smart.
Yeah,
And they'll pick up everything that you do. So if you tell to a child, oh, I'm always here for you, for example, but you spend 15 hours a day at work and they never see you in the morning or at nighttime, then the children say, well, you're not here for me. Therefore, because you're not here for me, therefore it means, and then they create their own stories. Oh, you don't love me. You prefer your work over me. And whatever that video, whatever that image that you create in your mind, that will stay with you as a child for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, because you make a decision about yourself from there, right? Oh, maybe I'm not worthy around this, right? Yeah. And then resentment comes up. So this ties into something very interesting, which you brought up. This is your own personal story behind this, right?
Yes.
I mean, you again, next generation. What was it? Shirtless to shirtless in 3 generations.
Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves within 3 generations, and it varies. It's an American terminology, but it's like rice patty to rice patty in 3 generations. That's in China. Clogs to clogs within 3 generations.
Okay.
Et cetera, et cetera. But it's essentially, the first generation will make it. Second generation, if you're lucky, will save it, because 70% actually fail to pass the wealth to the second generation. And then the third generation, if it gets to them, completely tank it. So 9 out of 10 families lose everything within 3 generations. But even 7 out of 10 will lose everything within just 2.
Wild.
Yeah.
So tell me your story then, mate, because it's something we haven't spoke about. We've hung out and done all the rest of it, but I've never. And this is why I love these to interview like people that I really like, because I get to look behind the scenes. So, I mean, tell me. So your father was an accountant and tax advisor. Is that the history?
Well, it goes further back. So my great grandfather was a multimillionaire in his right, in Cyprus, a small island on the Mediterranean. If anyone knows it, you can Google it. Lovely island. But yeah, he was a very wealthy individual, controlled a lot of land. And in those days, even today, really, control the land, you control the money, control the wealth. And he created a business out of it. He farmed the land. He created, the land generated money, should we say? And he was a great businessman. Big. Sure. Unfortunately, I never met him, but my father told me he was a big, strong, strapping man. And if you owed him money, he would turn up and let you know.
He'd come and get it.
Great businessman. He only had one child, my grandfather, who unfortunately was not a great businessman. Was never trained, was quite soft, never understood business, was never. This again, perfect example of transferring financial capital without the rest of the wealth. So he was like, here's everything, but I'm not going to teach you how to run a business. Disastrous strategy. And what happened? He lost it all. He and my father's eldest siblings, because my father was one of many. So the eldest siblings, they also managed to tank it along with my grandfather. Yet by the time my father was 8 years old, it all gone.
Wow.
It all gone. Wow. And he had to work from the age of 8 my father
Really?
in order to have a living, in order to eat.
Survive in
Yeah.
Cyprus?
Yeah, this was in Cyprus. So he was running a tractor on the land.
Wow.
Yeah, he worked the land in order, in order to make enough money to live off, which is
Wow.
insane. Can you
Your
imagine
dad
an
must
8-year-old
be.
child in England working? It's like slave labor,
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's against the law now, but back
just a
then,
touch.
yes. So your dad, let's just press pause on that. Your dad must be fascinating in himself.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. He's got lots of stories, as my mum has as well. I mean, her story is fascinating as well because her
Really?
father died in his mid-30s
Wow.
and left my mother, and my mum was one of 4 siblings, all girls.
Wow.
So her mum, and again, my grandfather, my matriarchal, matriarch, I think that's the right word.
Good enough.
Grandfather was also very rich and very successful, but he died very, very young. And my
Right.
mum was just a child. I think she was 4 when her father passed away. And you're talking, and instead of my grandmother's siblings helping with that situation, they saw it as an opportunity to land grab, which is insane. So
Common.
that's exactly what they did. They thought, oh, weak woman on her own, no husband. What a wonderful opportunity to fill our pockets. And literally, they fraudulently signed over lots of land to their name. What
Wow.
a lovely way to help a grieving woman.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love you too.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely insane.
wow. So your mum and your mum's from Cyprus too?
My mum's from Cyprus as well. So again, this all happened in Cyprus. And with her mum and her siblings, she had to come to England for job and work opportunities because my grandmother at the time was a skilled sewer.
Ah.
And the textile industry in the 60s was booming
Yes, it was.
in
Yes, it
England.
was.
It was booming. They needed skilled labor. My grandmother was very skilled at sewing clothes in the booming textile industry.
Wow. So that kind of created the stability. It kind of built things back together again.
Yeah, but while she was working, no one was at home looking after the children.
Mm.
So, my mum from a very young age had to walk to school, and she took, the role and responsibility of the second mum at the age of like 10, 11 years old,
Wow.
which is
It's more
even,
common than you think in so many different ways, right? It's so your dad, um, so where do you fit in the picture then with this?
yeah. So my dad came to England and met my mum as a budding accountant because he always wanted to be an accountant.
Okay.
Studied and trained here in England, ended up living in England, married my mum, and
Yeah.
literally became first gen. So he should have been third generation, but he
Sure.
became first gen. So that's your classic shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves within 3 generations. By the
Sure.
time it came to my father, all gone, which is a crazy story that affected us. And how do I fit in the pictures that I was told this story? I'm a teenager. My dad's telling me his story. And my mindset, my psychology is, oh, it's great. I'm destined to lose everything because
Interesting.
that's what happened to our family. It must be inevitable. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I have no control over this. This was going through my mind at the
Of
time,
course.
which was insane. But I followed my father's footsteps, became an accountant, carried on the family business, a bit of
Right.
succession planning there as well.
Right.
But then I started seeing it with my own clients.
Mm.
And that's what got me to realize, okay, this is not a problem that's just personal to my own family. I've seen this with other clients. I've seen this with other, associates, that family implosion is detrimental to wealth transfer.
Right. 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 Uh, is it trauma that you're seeing that gets passed through? Is it
It's multiple things. I mean, there's this saying that if you see, with family offices, if you've seen one family office, you've seen one family office.
right?
Yeah, every family is unique. Every family is
Sure.
completely different. There is no one size fits all, one problem fits all. But when it comes to research, everyone tries to put it in a box. But essentially, I've seen this firsthand, that when you delve in deep to any family problems, it all stems down to a lack of effective communication within the
Yeah.
family dynamic.
Yeah.
Families, what I've noticed, and again, irrespective of culture, okay, families
Yeah.
struggle to talk about what is truly important. And I do not know why that's the reason. I don't know, because what I see, what I've seen and what I've personally experienced
Mhm.
through my existing network
Mhm.
is that people tend to push things that they feel uncomfortable to talk about under the rug
Right. Right.
and hope that by magic it gets resolved by itself, which is
Yeah.
insane. And what I've also
Exactly.
seen as well is that people rely on hope as their generational wealth strategy. Like by some sort of miracle and through the strategy of hope,
Mm.
everything will be okay in the future,
Mm.
which is a crazy strategy because no one runs a business like that. I've never met a successful entrepreneur who hopes that his business is going to be successful. Yeah.
Sure, sure,
I mean, can you
sure.
imagine standing up in an audience full of entrepreneurs and saying, today we're going to use hope as our number one strategy for this business and for all your entities? I mean, you'd be kicked out. They'd probably throw stones at you, you know?
They
um,
probably would.
but
Interesting.
so my message is, why are you using that as your strategy for your own family?
Yeah. And it again, and that's partly what with your world and coaching and everything, it allows the things that are being hidden to actually be brought up into the open, and what you're talking about before, in a safe environment, right? And that's where you can actually communicate, because like you're saying, do you find that it can be compartmentalized? If you, like you were talking about the lawyer, or you're talking about this professional, this professional, this professional, and then it's like it gets even more hidden. It's like, it becomes cloak and daggers to a degree, right?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, advisors sadly work in silos. That's one of
Yeah.
the reasons why we built Danti, so it
Yes.
becomes the heartbeat of the family's wealth that all advisors can tap into. So they're all working off their same plan,
Yes.
the same digital provider, the same digital program, shall I say? So there's
Hmm.
nowhere to hide. So you have accountability, and everyone's working together. Because doesn't that make sense?
It definitely does.
I'm not talking brain surgery. It's like, does it not make sense for all the advisors to work together towards the common vision of the family, whatever that may be? So every family is completely unique.
Sure, sure, sure. But the
But what
common goal, there's a start, right? What's actually the most beautiful outcome that we can create here? What's the bigger picture here? Not just about wealth preservation, like you're saying. How do we make this go 100 years? 200 years. Octavian, 1,000 years,
Yeah,
right?
Octavian, classic example.
Yeah.
But
So
again, he could share his problems with you as
oh,
well. I mean, his story is fascinating.
it is fascinating. It is fascinating. And he'll be on the show at some point, and we'll tie all these together in a big package for people. But does this
Definitely.
go back to your 10 pillars here? Because the first one you spoke about many times is communication.
Communication, number
Second
one
one,
pillar. Health,
health.
yes.
So what do you mean? Obviously, we're talking. Are we talking just fitness and health? Is that where you're coming from? So just people actually being optimized in with biohacking, and then like, just what do you mean by health? Mental,
Let,
physical?
let's go even on the most basic level. It's not just that your personal health, but it's the health of your children, the health of your family, but also the health of your advisors. So
Fascinating.
if you're running, let's say you're running a family office and you're heavily reliant on a CEO to run that family office on your behalf,
Mm.
but he's had, I don't know, 2 heart attacks in the last 3 years. And
Right.
if anything were to happen to him, the whole thing would implode because you're so heavily reliant on that individual. Health now becomes an absolute key pillar. And have you bothered to ask the question of, how healthy are my advisors, especially the ones I rely on? Even if you're running a business, and you always have key members of that business. I talk about the business of being a family, but let's just take it on a
Sure.
company, on a corporate level. You'll have a board of directors. Does it not make sense for those board of directors to be working in the most optimal way? And how key is their health to ensure that they're working in the most optimal manner?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not talking any, when I mention this, people go, oh yeah. Like this is, in my opinion, like common sense. But people are so busy being busy, they
Mm,
stop, they fail to stop, take a
mm.
step back, and then just say, okay, now let's look at the bigger picture. What's going on here? Where are the areas of risk to my business or to my family's wealth?
Exactly.
And let
Exactly.
me spend the time to ensure that we deal with these issues. And that's why I brought about the 10 pillars. And then now you can see how health is absolutely vital to all of that.
Yeah, it's as yeah. Again, it goes like again. It's like if you're reliant, and that's why Dante's so fundamental, because you're not then reliant on one specific CEO,
Correct.
for example, who if passes away with their vision, passes away with their information, and it's like it's you're creating a platform that allows who plug and play to a degree. It's because it's
Exactly.
not about the individual; it's about the family.
An operating system for you to run your family's wealth
Yes.
based on the 10 pillars of generational wealth. So if
Yes.
generational wealth is important to you and you want a digital solution, we've created Danti specifically for that.
Yes. I love that. And it becomes more and more clear as we talk. So does that move to then is the third one education?
Yes. So we mentioned education, and I say education, but again, it's quite a vast
Sure.
subject.
Sure.
And I was thinking of a term that encapsulates everything. Having
Sure.
spoken to multiple consultants in the family office space, we seem to come to an agreement that education is a nice banner to put everything
Okay. Okay.
under. But
Okay.
essentially, it's training the next generation to become good beneficiaries,
Yes. Yes.
whether that's succession planning in the business,
Mm-hmm.
training the next
Mm-hmm.
generation if they're ready and if they want to get effective communication.
Sure.
Ask the next generation if they want to take over the business.
Sure.
Rarely happens, by the way.
Which is
Rarely
interesting,
happens. You think
right?
it's a common thing, but no, it's not.
They don't want and what I found with working with next gen, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, but what I found is that it's because they're trying to find their own identity rather than being under the umbrella of the business or the first generation or the father figure, right? So they're trying to find their own identity, and often what happens is from what I've seen and helped is that they're very traumatized still, right? And so they're looking, this is why the next gen is very good in many ways, and they're open to what we do, especially with your stuff and what I do, because they're looking for solutions. They're not looking for constant external validation. They've actually gone internal, and they're realizing that there is their brain, it is their patterns of behavior, it is awareness that they have to adapt, they have to change, because they want to live a healthy life, they want to live a happy life, they want to live a life that they want to live rather than being boxed or confined or controlled, right? Is
Natural
that
human traits, by the way, what you're explaining here.
yes, yes, yes,
Every human being on this planet wants exactly what you just said.
absolutely, freedom.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? But sometimes allowing the next gen or giving them the freedom to do what they want may end up benefiting the business anyway, because they'll go out and experience something, that they see fit, and they end up coming back into the business with new ideas, fresh ideas, and end up, you know, in growing that business and making it even more successful than it actually was. So allowing the next gen that freedom of choosing their own path might be or will be the best thing for your own business in the long term anyway, as
Yes,
opposed
I
to
love that.
sticking them in the company against their wishes and forcing them to do something that, they end up fighting against you over.
Right, which creates sabotage patterns in itself, right? Rather than allow, like you're talking about, allowing them to evolve and grow as a human being, right, in their own identity, which means ultimately, once they've worked through their own things, they're going to fundamentally come back to the family and want the best thing for the family. And so I love that. So education to do with all spectrums of this, education to do with everything, right?
Yeah, education to look after your finance, education in terms of looking
Right.
after your investments, education in terms of running the family business if that's what they need, education in terms of what is important for them as human beings,
Yes.
and that could be something as simple as having an outlet for them to talk to, having an outlet to have a conversation with someone who does not impose any judgment on them.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
work that you do, that is a classic example. You work with Next Gen. I mean,
Sure.
how important is it for them to turn around to someone like yourself and just say whatever it is it's in their mind? Because they know, one, they trust you, and two, you're not going
Yes.
to impose any judgment on what
It's
they
a
say.
safe space.
Yes. Do you know how important that
Safe.
is?
Yeah.
And as a parent, you need to be responsible to create an outlet for the next generation because
Mhm.
it's really valuable for them, as opposed to saying, "I think there's something wrong with you because I think you're
Right.
Y Z," and people are very quick to pigeonhole the
Right.
next gen. I mean,
Yes.
ADHD is a classic example. I think you've
Yes.
got ADHD because you're not listening to me. No, maybe there's a reason why they're not listening to you. It's not because they've got some sort of medical issue, for crying out loud. Maybe you're the problem. Have you ever seen that, for example? But again, give them the freedom to make their choice and to have an outlet. And again, that all fits within education. Have
Mm.
that safe space to learn.
I
Have that
love
safe
that.
space to understand what it is that they want in their lives. Whether it's learning about health, good health habits,
Mm.
whether, I mean, basic things like, we look at, I know it's been mentioned way too many times, but the classic education system that you see in the Western world is flawed in many,
Oh,
many
hugely.
ways.
Hugely.
People go to, you will go to school, you go to university, and you might end up learning an academic or getting an academic qualification.
Mm.
Great. But in the bigger scheme of things, how trained are you to live this life?
Mm.
I did most of my learning when I left university.
100%. 100%.
I learned, everything that I know today was outside of uni, not when I was in uni getting an academic qualification, which is great,
Yeah.
by the way. I'm not slamming
Not
academic
at all.
qualification. There is a place for that, clearly. But life is one big lesson that you need to learn. And it's constant, it's consistent. And if you want to grow as a human being, then you need to grow. So does it not make sense to have education in the field of generational wealth
Sure.
within, on our platform, which is what we're growing, which we're building today?
Yeah, yeah, I love it, and I love the keyword that you used there. I thought that was brilliant. Outlet,
Mm.
because that's the same with that's the same with founders. That's the same with hedge fund managers. That's the same with CEOs. It's the same with anyone who's got pressure on the shoulders, including a mother, right? To have a safe space, to have an outlet that then they can actually think clear or get a different perspective on. It's huge. Even with the brain, with neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity means that the brain is able to adapt and change. It's a two-step process. The first step is awareness over the pattern. The pattern cannot change from brain chemical wise or adapt without awareness over it. It is literally a two-step process. But if we're constantly hiding, if we're constantly distracting ourselves through sabotage patterns or escapisms, or all of these things that create damage, right? Longevity is it's so self-destructive for human beings, right? And we all just want to live our lives. The truth is, what people probably don't understand, maybe some for sure, and some who don't, but what really humans want is just a simple life. They don't want complex, like this is just the world now, so we're in it, right? But
Yep.
really, if your home life is horrible, then do you think that might have a knock-on effect to your work? Do you know, if your health is horrible, do you think that might affect your family, and do you think it might affect your work? Right? It goes on and on
Yeah,
and
of course
on
it
and
does.
on. You
And people
know?
can't see the connection. And it's important to get it out there that everything is connected.
Everything. The mind-body connection, right? So that leads to your fourth pillar.
Correct.
And I'm
Vision.
vision, mate. One step
So
ahead of me.
yeah, no, again, let's go back to the most successful businesses that you and I both know. Everything stemmed from having a vision. So that, there'll be a
Oh,
founder that comes in place and he will have this mega vision, Steve Jobs, probably the
sure.
biggest visionary out there, what he
Oh,
wanted to achieve and what he wanted. It's no surprise that Apple is where it is today because it's all based on his original vision.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, why are we not applying that same vision to your family dynamic? If you are successful in your own right and you've built a large amount of wealth, what is the vision around the wealth? What do you want your family to achieve? What do you want to achieve? What does the family name mean? How do you want it to mean in the next 10,
Love it.
20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years time? What are the expectations? What do you want for your family? I don't know. Everyone's completely different. But if you don't have a vision and you're just heading into a dark space, then don't be surprised when things go wrong because there's no guidance there. And I'm not saying you should have a rugged vision that never changes over 100 years because that's complete
Absolutely.
garbage. Even
Absolutely.
companies change their vision over time. Um,
Sure.
because things change and life evolves. But it's all about
Oh,
having, but that vision is like almost a guiding principle
yes. Yes. Yes.
that lays out that enables you to make effective decisions
Sure.
surrounding your division because that's where you go back to is like, does XY fit within
Yes.
our original
Yes.
vision?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
why are families not implementing the same thing for themselves? Especially, you're wealthy, you've built a lot of money over time. What is your vision for the family business? What is your vision for the next generation? What is your vision for the grandchildren, the great grandchildren? How do you want this to end up? What is your philanthropic vision? Another
Yeah.
pillar, by the way, but
Yes.
again, connected to vision because everything is interconnected within the 10 pillars. Then
Mhm.
these aren't standalone items.
Yeah.
That's
It's
why
an
I create a
ecosystem.
circle as
Yes.
opposed to
Yes.
rugged pillars.
It's a great graphic, and it is an ecosystem, right? And the truth is, behind vision, it's like with anything, any path will get you there if you don't know where you're going, right? You're just going to spin in circles. So by it's people don't do this in relationships, but we do it in businesses. You don't meet your partner and give it, okay, we're going to hang out, maybe we'll get married, but actually, what do you want in life? What do you want in life? Are we even
Oh,
on the same path?
marriage and finding the effective partner, that in itself requires education.
Yes. Yeah, lots
Get it
of
wrong,
education.
very expensive mistake to make. Don't believe me? Have a look at the most recent divorces in history.
It's true,
We've had
right?
some mega divorces in the last few years.
Bezos.
I think Jeff Bezos, is still number one. Yeah,
That was a biggie.
that was a biggie.
But she's all about
Bill
philanthropy.
Melinda Gates, that wasn't small
Ooh.
either.
Well, no, that wasn't small. Wasn't small.
Many, many millions.
But again, vision. I love this. And again, these are so simple, yet they're so complex. And so vision. Was anything else you'd add to vision before we move on to probably the most beautiful one out your 10 pillars?
No, I mean, effectively, it is what it says on the tin. It's just have an idea of where it is that you want to go. But most importantly, share that vision, communication with your family and your advisors. Because if you want your advisors to work together
Yes.
towards a common goal, then does it not make sense for you to share that vision to your advisors?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And that comes from the founder also through generations, right? They can share that vision right
Of
through
course.
yeah, 10th generation. Then at least they know what the ethics were behind this, where this is all coming from.
Guiding principles. What are the
I,
guiding principles behind any decision? As
yeah.
opposed to what's the legal contract that we signed in XYZ day. It's like you go a step back. You need an overriding principle that everyone buys into, and that's quite
Yes.
key because
Sure.
you're constantly communicating
Sure.
amongst yourselves. And
Sure.
I don't apologize for constantly repeating myself because these
Mm,
principles are so important. These pillars are absolutely vital if you want to establish a successful generational wealth strategy.
absolutely. And that leads to philanthropy, right?
Yes, philanthropy, beautiful. We're going now on the outer pillars.
Mm,
So philanthropy is stunning. Why is philanthropy important? It's because it creates a purpose greater than the individual needs of each family member. It becomes almost vital once you've secured a certain level of wealth, because once you've bought all your toys and your gimmicks, and once you've achieved a certain amount of wealth, and paying the bills is no longer one of your main driving points, because that is almost automated and done. And now
Oh,
you've got this big pot of cash, big
yes.
pot of wealth. It's like, what do you want to do with it? And
Mm,
again, the most successful families out there, and I'll give you the great example, the Rockefellers, who've done this brilliantly. They have their own philanthropic fund. You're seeing Warren Buffett doing this now as
yes.
well for his own children, giving
Yes.
them charitable trusts as opposed to giving them money and saying, go and donate all this cash. Philanthropy brings the family together. It
I
brings
agree.
the family together. It helps the next gen create an interest over the money, even if they're not directly involved in the family business or in the family investments. So now all
Mm,
of a sudden, they're more interested in the money, in the financial capital, because of this philanthropic activity that they want to support, that they're passionate about.
yes.
You're
Yes.
seeing timing, a lot of wealthy families now out setting up their own charitable foundations or charitable trusts, and they're getting the next gen involved in there.
Love it. It's so important for fulfillment. Otherwise, the money becomes empty. The energy behind, or the emotional driver behind the money, without the heart centeredness, without actually giving, it becomes empty. And I feel that the next gen know that, and that's why they don't like it. They don't. Well, what does it mean? What does it mean? I'm just getting external validation from things. No, what does what is this
And they
really?
don't value or appreciate the
Yes,
wealth as well. Again, that stems back from education, but there's a lot of guilt that I've
guilt,
seen with next gen who
guilt.
inherit a lot of money because they feel that they don't deserve the money.
Yes,
And
yes.
if their main driver is guilt, which is
Hmm.
just a horrible emotion, by the way, very, very negative, then what are they going to do with that money? They're going to get rid of it as
Yes.
fast as they can. So now you're starting to see where and why the wealth dissipates over
Mm,
time.
mm. Again, goes back to being human, goes back to trauma, goes back to this individual, right? And it goes again, it goes back. There's the structural side, what you're talking about, but there's the also the personal side, right? And they aren't separate. It's like the mind body connection. How insane is it, right? Going back in science, that they thought that no, the brain is the brain and the body is the body. Kind of in the same thing.
Yeah,
It's
you would think so, wouldn't you?
you would think so. And it's the same with a family business, a family dynamics, relationships, brothers, sisters, it's next gens. It's all the same thing. It's the mind body connection inside of a human being, but it's also the generational connection, the emotional intelligence, the social intelligence, the self-awareness, the education like you're talking about around how to move this forwards as a business. But also when you add the philanthropy to it, I just think it's such uh, such the most, it's probably the most powerful piece of the puzzle, which is like the glue. Because if people buy into or understand, oh okay, the more money we have, the more people we can help. Oh, this means we can go through 100 generations and actually create impact in the world, rather than just taking and
Stuff.
buy stuff. There's the word,
And I
stuff.
like the way you use glue because that's important because I reiterate and say that philanthropy is the glue that keeps the family together.
We think the same, mate.
It's brilliant. I like that. So no, you're 100% correct. And it also, by the way, can and will create goodwill for the business.
That's true. As a business
That's an
move,
off-spin bonus. I
yeah,
wouldn't suggest you do it for business reasons because that's not the reason why you should be giving money away. But associating your family and the family name to good causes can only create goodwill for you.
yes,
I mean, it has
yes,
been used ruthlessly in the past by certain individuals who will remain nameless because I don't fancy getting sued. So yeah, it can have a bit of a dark side towards it, and I see why people can have a charge over philanthropy. But if you're authentic about your giving,
there you go.
you're authentic about making a difference to this world, it
Yeah,
will create a goodwill to your family name. It will glue the family together, as you mentioned. It will keep you together. And it creates a purpose around the money.
A purpose and fulfillment.
Yeah.
I love this. And that leads to explain to me, because this is what Dominic always spoke about, and actually Octavian, but it was governance.
Okay, governance. Yes. So it's the systems that run the family. So I mentioned to you that, the business of being a family. And that's why, we created a system for governance, which is what Danti is effectively. You can't run your wealth unless you know what is actually there and there's some transparency in place. But if you want to simplify governance, because it's quite an overly used term, let's use it in the most simple manner. You've got a company, and that company has a board of directors,
Right.
clearly. And those board of directors, they meet regularly, and they all got their own assigned roles and responsibilities of the business.
Right.
And they're trying to run the business in according to the vision of the founder. So now you're seeing where this tags along. And they meet regularly to promote the business, to discuss what needs to be done to take it to the next stage of the business life in order to fulfill the requirements of their shareholders.
Right.
Now, once the family has grown to a certain level, you need to start implementing governance structures. Who is responsible for what, where, and why? Who is responsible for running the philanthropic arm of the family? Who is responsible for running the social get-togethers of the family? Who is responsible for running the business, the actual family business, if there is a family business? Who's responsible for running the investment arm of the family? Who's responsible for going out there and finding new deals for the family, whether it's private equity, whether it's real estate, whatever that may be? Now, all of a sudden, everyone has their own roles and responsibilities, and they should then meet as a board, as a family board, every so often, monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, whatever it may be. So you can come together and communicate what you have done. And then at the end of the year, you explain everything to the shareholders, like an AGM or a council of family members.
Right.
And say, this is what we have done as a family. Now, that's governance in a very basic overview, shall we say. But it all stems from having effective communication. There's no point implementing, I've seen families do this. They'll implement a family constitution, for example.
Okay.
And that family constitution will be drawn up by one family member.
Okay.
With zero involvement of the rest of the family. Now, I don't need to explain to you how ineffective a strategy that is.
Sure.
Because when something is forced upon you as a human being, what are you going to do the moment that individual who forced it upon you passes away? You're going to take that piece of paper and you're going to put it in the bin.
Sure.
Because you weren't involved in it.
Yes.
So the communication starts first in order to create effective governance, not the other way around. But you get a lot of private banks going, yeah, governance is really important to help run your family. Governance. And so, you as a family member think, oh, I need to implement this thing called governance because I'm being told to do so. Like, when was the last time you sat down as a family and spoke about what's important?
Yes.
Oh, never. Maybe you should start there.
Communication.
Yeah. And then we can focus on, implementing governance structures. And I've again seen it time and time again. I've spoken to Dominic about this as well, and he'll reiterate the same thing. There's no point having a family constitution if you've got no involvement with the family members. You get no buy-in.
Right.
Pointless piece of paper. Or even worse, you want to avoid inheritance tax, so you draw up a will and make sure it's really tax efficient. But then you don't tell any of the beneficiaries what's in that will during your lifetime.
Right.
And that is the number one way to ensure that when you pass away, the next gen end up in court.
100%.
Great strategy for litigation.
Yeah. Good for the lawyers.
Yeah, good for the lawyers, terrible for your family. Don't do it. Speak to your family. Yes, it's difficult. No one likes talking about death.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's an easy subject to talk about, but does it not make sense whilst you are alive to discuss what you're going to give to the beneficiaries after you have gone.
Yes, of course it does. In any context, right? I mean, again, it goes back to again, it's fear. It's fear of, well, I'm gonna then have to bring up all of the things that have happened inside of our family, because this is how I made this decision around this, which is then going to trigger trauma. It's going to trigger conversations, and it's someone's like, it's just too messy, so if I keep it quiet, then I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, but I get it. And avoiding a problem does not make the problem go away.
No, it does not. No, it doesn't. It makes it 100 times worse, right? Because yeah, exactly. So what's the difference between what you're talking about with governance and then structure?
Okay, so your structures, your legal structures.
Okay.
So as
Okay.
you're growing your wealth, it can get very complicated very quickly. So, it's not unusual for a wealthy family to buy assets in different legal structures.
Right.
Whether it's for, I don't know, for tax purposes, for example, or whatever reason it may be. You might have a company here in England, but you might have an offshore company in the BVI to own your overseas assets. Just giving you a light example, you might have some trusts in place. You might have some qualified non-UK pension schemes in place. Whatever that may be, I've seen far too many families not even understand the structures that were historically set up. And because they don't know what they've actually got, they don't know who the legal owner is, it creates a mess over time. I had to deal with a 7-year litigation battle on behalf of one of my clients because they never knew the structures. Never had a clue, never even met the fiduciaries who set it up, never had the discussion with her dad who set it up. At the time I took over, he sadly passed away. It's too late. Too late to have those conversations about, who is the legal owner of the asset that you are the beneficial owner of.
Right.
And there's a clear difference between being a legal owner and being a beneficial owner.
Sure.
Because you might be benefiting from the income, real estate being a classic example, but you don't legally own that asset. It's this entity that's been set up in an offshore, it's a company that's set up in an offshore entity that you don't know about, an offshore jurisdiction.
Right.
So have your structures, but more importantly, having your structures in a clear, defined manner. And again, this is what we've done in Danti because we want to simplify life, enables you to make your advisors accountable. Because you've got everything in one place. And you can ask the question, okay, these are my structures. How much money am I saving for all this? Is it fit for purpose? I'm not saying for any second for any viewer here to become a tax expert. Of course not.
Right.
But it's essential to be able to ask the right questions of your advisors.
Right.
And not having a clear picture of your structures means you haven't got a clue what question to ask. You don't even know what you own and where it's held in.
Right.
And great advisors will always want to be made accountable.
Absolutely. And if they don't, it's kind of a red flag, right? What are you really in this for?
Yeah, what are you trying to hide?
Yes. What are you trying to hide?
Why are you charging me these fees, Mr. Trustee, Mr. Fiduciary, whoever that may be? Is this structure fit for purpose? Am I generating any value from this particular structure? Do I even need it? Can I just get rid of half these entities and just simplify my life?
Right.
What's the point of spending money on something, on fees, if you're not generating any savings or tax savings or, whatever reason it may be? It might be for security, by the way. So not everyone owns assets in offshore jurisdictions primarily for tax. Sometimes they do it they want things to be opaque. They don't want the public finding out what they own.
Right.
For security purposes.
Yeah. It could become a target, anything, right? So that makes a lot of sense. So Documentation then, how does that tie in with this? Because you've got the governance, the structure, but the documentation, how's that
Yeah,
different?
where is it kept? Is a good question that needs to be asked. So again, whilst you're
Mm.
buying all these assets, where are these documents being kept? And we see it sometimes they're kept on spreadsheets, sometimes are they kept in
Oh,
the hard copies, and they're kept in some sort of safe. But where are they
oh,
kept? Or they're in digital format, but what server are they kept on? I don't know. I mean, we had this one Indian family we were dealing with who owned hundreds of properties, and they did not know where those documents were.
wow,
They
wow.
knew that they were kept somewhere amongst, their plethora of advisors, but they didn't know who was holding what and if they were complete.
That's
Disaster.
scary.
Yeah, of course it's scary. But even worse, I mean, how many times have we go to the media and an individual pass away, and you'll think, oh, his will gets read, and then magically a second will appears out of nowhere. Again, documentation, keeping it in a safe, secure manner, whereby
Mm,
one beneficiary benefits over all his other beneficiaries. And the
interesting.
only way you can clear this mess up is to go to court.
Yeah.
Because clearly the person who's the donor has passed away. Beneficiaries are all arguing amongst themselves which will was genuine, which will was changed, why was it changed? Was it genuine, but was he of right mind? He or she were they of right mind when they changed the will? Or is it
Exactly.
complete fraud? Don't know. But if you keep your
Mm,
documents in a robust manner and utilize blockchain technology
beautiful.
to create an audit trail, so if anything is changed, it gets stamped,
Exactly.
then
Exactly.
that mess can be saved and avoided. But again, it stems from communicating. So if you're going to create a will, and yes, you're going to keep it in a safe, secure manner, make sure you communicate that will so there's no surprises when that
Yes.
will is ended up being read out. Things like power of attorney. If you God forbid you're in a coma, you're still alive, but you need powers of attorney in place for someone
Yeah.
to make those financial and medical decisions. But where are
Sure.
they kept? Was it stamped correctly? Sometimes it needs to be notarized. Has it been notarized? Is it up to date? I don't know. Where is it kept? Because you need to utilize this document, this power of attorney, in order to prove to the banks, the lawyers, the trustees that whoever you may be, are
Yes.
authorized to make decisions on behalf of patriarch or the matriarch of the family.
Sure. Sure. Makes total sense, right? And you can see how it gets so messy and complicated. And that brings you to advisors, right?
Yep.
And so when you say advisors, there seems to be a lot. A lot of advisors. And then it's who to trust.
Who
And
are they?
yeah,
Who
okay.
is in your advisory team? Who is your trusted advisor? I mean, it could be one accountant. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be loads and loads of advisors. It could
Okay.
be. It can be quite vast, if depending on the vastness of your wealth and
Sure.
geographically where everything is kept.
Sure.
So, if all your assets are in England, for example, you're not going to need advisors in Dubai and BVI.
Right.
Not needed. You're probably going to need UK lawyer and maybe a UK tax advisor and probably a UK accountant.
Good.
Team done.
Right.
But who are they? Have they been introduced to the next generation, or are they complete
Mm,
strangers?
that's
I've heard these. I mean, these some of the quirkiest stories I've found where husband will pass away, wife did not know anything about any advisor, and ended up going through his wallet to find business cards
oh
and
wow.
contacting the people on the business cards and say, "Were you advising my late husband?" I mean, that's how bad it can get.
Wow. That's old school as well, right? And that's why things need to be updated into a
The
fundamental
system.
system, and it needs to be like you're talking about with introducing, which is so important, which is the blockchain technology with all of this, because it is that three-step ledger, right? It's
Keeping it
there,
safe, keeping it
it's
secure. Yeah.
there, and that's what people don't understand, maybe, but the new generation does. The next gen does.
Let me tell you let me give you another story. Okay, this is quite scary. And I spoke to an ex-director of a private bank. I won't name the private bank, but it's quite a major private bank here in England.
Okay.
And he asked me to guess the amount of unclaimed bank accounts resting with this one bank in this one country. So these are bank accounts that were opened up at some stage. A big chunk of money was deposited. Whoever was responsible for that account clearly has disappeared, probably passed away. And no one has gone to claim this particular bank account. So how much money do you think?
Wow. This is a UK bank or?
It's a UK bank, UK private bank.
You know, you're setting that number up there. It's got to be like a billion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 1.4 billion pounds.
Wow, just in unclaimed sitting there.
Unclaimed money just sitting there.
The bank are happy though because they're making money off it.
Yeah, of course they are. They're happy, but I mean, what a waste. That's just one bank.
What a waste.
Yeah.
Someone's worked so hard to get to accumulate that, right? Then they've had the thought, okay, I'm going to put this, it's safe somewhere, and then wow. So
you
what
don't tell
happens?
anyone about your assets. You don't tell anyone, who your advisor or who your bank manager is.
Right. So what happens with that money?
To find out? I really haven't got a clue. It just sits.
It sits there forever?
Because it's too big for the government to take it. Like in America, if it's unclaimed for 2 years, the government's allowed to take it.
Of course they do.
Unsurprisingly.
Of course.
But in England, I don't think there's any rules. I think the rules stem if it's immaterial. And I think that means less than £100.
Okay.
Then the bank can just take that money and close the account. But for vast chunks of money, can't do that. There's no law or legislation out there that enables them to say, yeah, I'll take that. Or it goes to the Crown.
Interesting. That's wild. That's wild. So does that tie into assets, which is the 10th?
So yeah, it ties in perfectly to assets. What do you own? Where is it? Where is it kept? Who the legal owner is? Who's the beneficial owner?
Right.
And of course, it ties in quite nicely. It's, really relevant when it comes to things like that are difficult to trace, like private equity, for example.
Okay.
So I'll give you a really good story with Maddie, my business partner. So one of the businesses he exited. Obviously, when you exit a business, someone comes in, buys your company, and whoever had invested in your company has to be paid out from that money. So one of his shareholders who had invested in him several years back had gone missing. Had gone missing. So Maddie had to pay for a private investigator.
Oh, wow.
That's how insane this is, to find this person so that he can then deliver his check to him.
He wanted to pay him.
Because he couldn't hold that money. It wasn't his money. Yeah, he's not the shareholder. That belongs to someone else. And he had to then go out and find that person in order to pay him his check. Now, luckily, in this particular example, Maddie was trustworthy. Maddie wanted to do the right thing. How many in that position would do the right thing, especially when you're dealing with a lot of money? In this case, it was 6 figures. It wasn't a small amount of money.
Sure.
It was a nice return for that, for that private investor, who invested in the company and then forgot.
Yes. Yes.
He forgot that he invested in this company. He lost track of it, lost interest.
Yeah, because time goes by and he's doing a lot of probably investments. So interesting. So I understand now that whole ecosystem of these 10 pillars, the whole ecosystem of why Danti is actually came about to solve, to create a solution. I understand now why you're so passionate about this. I understand your history, your personal history, your professional history. I understand why the books became so important, because you were able to look into literally the mindsets of 100 people and of generational wealth and find the key elements that created dilemma or created solutions. So I think we did well today, Nicholas. I think we
covered quite a lot. Again, of course, the books are available for anyone to buy from Amazon. In fact, both books are available on Amazon.
What are the names? What are the names of the books? I'm going to put links, but...
So, it's Generational Wealth was the second book, which I co-wrote with a lovely private client lawyer called Antoinetta Proctor, who's since left her legal firm to work for a family office.
Oh,
a
great.
Permanent single family office. So congratulations to her, because that's really literally that happened last month.
Oh, wow.
The first book which I wrote on my own, which is The 4 Fundamentals of Family Prosperity. That's also available on my website, familyprosperity.com. The links on both books are available, of course, on Danti.io.
Beautiful.
And
is there anywhere you'd want to direct people? Is it just we're heading over to Danti? Do we want to Danti.io? Is there anywhere else that we can find you? Yeah,
you can find me on my LinkedIn page. We'll put the links in. Yeah, cool. we've got a YouTube page for Danti as well. Brilliant. And and Danti.io is the main website now that we're putting all our blood, sweat, and tears to create and grow. And we're getting a new website will hopefully be coming out in the next, I'd say, 7 to 10 days. Brand new website. Beautiful. Which is really cool. All our videos will be there, our blogs, and this interview as well will be there as well. We'll probably break it up and put bits in so people like seeing shorter videos, and we'll put the whole lot on our YouTube page as well.
Fantastic. Nicholas, it's been a pleasure. Definitely. Lots of fun, and loved it. Thank you for being on the show, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Boom. We're out.
That's all for this episode of the Neuro-Performance Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to stay connected, rate, review, and visit andymurphy.online to take the next step towards unlocking your pure potential. See you next time.